Hey, what's going on, everyone? Feels like I haven't done a general chat in a while, so let's talk about something that has, for the most part, always, just bugged me a little. Let me confirm to you one thing. F-Zero was always popular on its respective consoles since day one. Whether that was the original groundbreaking SNES entry, the 60 FPS, 30 cars on screen, local 4-player race and deathmatch N64 version, or the peak arcade racing Nintendo, Sega, Namco, Triforce board F-Zero GX, and even the somewhat standard entry but a somewhat spiritual sequel to F-Zero on the SNES, F-Zero Maximum Velocity on the Game Boy Advance. All these games were popular enough on their respective platforms to mostly push above 1 million in sales. But of course, as some may know, F-Zero GX on the GameCube was the last console entry, which, although arguably is not only the greatest F-Zero game ever made, not only the greatest futuristic racing game ever made, but also arguably the greatest arcade racing game ever made, period. F-Zero GX was critically acclaimed, but also unfortunately on a platform which done well enough in sales, but nowhere near well enough for a core home Nintendo platform. And then add to the fact that even by that generation, even after how popular futuristic racers were on previous generations of consoles, which were of course the Sega Saturn, N64 and PlayStation, even by the following generation the market had drastically changed and consumers were now looking for a different type of racer, one fueled by the success of games like Gran Turismo, Metropolis Street Racer. I mentioned MSI, that was on the Dreamcast, which then turned, that game turned into Project Gotham Racing, and additional new racing games like Burnout and Need for Speed Underground. The world of futuristic racers didn't cease to exist, but their market appeal was reduced in favor of racers using more real-world cars in real-world locations. F-Zero wasn't the only victim of this. Wipeout, a series which undeniably helped make the PlayStation brand what it was, along with other titles like Ridge Racer. These games were released on the PlayStation 2, and whilst Ridge Racer 5 got some shine, Wipeout Fusion had nowhere near the same success or impact that its predecessors had, and even its sales numbers took a beating. But this isn't just a futuristic racing thing. This happened to many genres of games that were once the bread and butter of gaming, but were now sidelined or nowhere near as impactful, or even completely sometimes ditched in favor of something new, or because the developers had been shut down or were chasing new trends. As a few examples, fighting games were whittled down to a few big IPs, which even they struggled. Arcade racers came to a crash. Point-and-click adventures, the once heart and soul of PC gaming, were almost forgotten about on consoles. Light gun shooters, that's the staple of the arcades, and they were big enough on consoles, that most major developers would release a gun accessory, produce games to support them. Classic shooters or shoot 'em ups were stripped down to a few big names, like Gradius, but even their sales and impacts were almost non-existent. Mecha games or mech games with giant robots like Zone of the Enders, Mech Warrior, Armored Core, which was recently released again today. People used to love giant robots in games, but they too became somewhat niche. Real-time strategy games like Command & Conquer, Age of Empires, Warcraft and Starcraft. Hell, Warcraft, the genre that the once defining genre, defining series it was, hasn't returned since the World of Warcraft took the world by storm, and it took StarCraft 2 over 10 years to return. 3D platformers, although still trying in the PS2, Xbox, Dreamcast and GameCube era, saw their impact reduced, with many not surviving into the following generation. And even games like Crash Bandicoot, the one staple of the PlayStation brand, it had new releases, but their sales just plummeted. And hell, even JRPGs, the cornerstone of the mighty PlayStation empire, saw their impact greatly reduced to where even the Final Fantasy brand, after the release of Final Fantasy X, saw itself struggling to stay somewhat not relevant, but even impacting as big as it was on the PlayStation. All genres took a beating, some more than others, but I wholeheartedly believe that no genre, no matter how beat up or niche, no genre whatsoever cannot find its place in gaming through the ages with new entries and also new or just new genres in general. No matter how strange or bizarre, no genre deserves to die. Gaming has gotten to where it was because it built itself proudly on its diversity in genres and the diversity of the games within those genres. And we as gamers have and always will suffer when these genres are reduced to small samples of or dust, because a momentary trend take holds. So when I see people saying that developers are releasing their older games or releasing a modified version of an older game to gauge interest, I can't but help have this get just under my skin a little. With the recent release of as a perfect example now, with the recent release of F-Zero 99, we are seeing people absolutely loving the game, and this is with the SNES style of visuals as well. We've gone generations where people only knew F-Zero through Captain Falcon as Smash Bros, or its inclusions in games like Mario Kart 8 and Nintendo Land, but even in Nintendo Land was super niche. But like when developers step aside from an IP because the last major entry didn't hit the market the way they were hoping for, I always look at the context and the timing of such things and what it means to keep a series relative. If Nintendo wanted to keep F-Zero relative without initially pumping bigger resources into a new entry after GX, they had every opportunity to do so on platforms where they decided to keep other IPs that were somewhat niche or lower selling relative. As an example, Pikmin. There was no new Pikmin game on either the Nintendo DS or the Nintendo Wii. Two of Nintendo's highest selling platforms ever, and two of the industry's highest selling platforms ever. Instead, what we got on the Wii was Pikmin 1 and 2 with motion controls. Now, the motion controls changed the game for Pikmin, but as a release, it wasn't exactly setting the world on fire yet. Here it was, Pikmin in some shape or form on the Nintendo Wii. Could this have not been done for F-Zero GX? Whether that was adding motion controls in some form, having a Wiimote speaker shout out, "You got boost power," for some added effect, or hell, even adding 4-player online racing to the game. The same could be said for the 3DS and Wii U, which both got new entries to the still somewhat struggling sale-wise Pikmin series, with Hey Pikmin and Pikmin 3. Now, would you, now some would say, but Pikmin as a series, has more mass appeal because of its visuals and gameplay, and it's more Nintendo-like. But I have two things to say to that. One, its gameplay is a real-time strategy game, much like I mentioned previously with Command & Conquer and StarCraft. And two, define Nintendo-like to me, because most people perceive Nintendo to be this kiddie-cuddly-like company who only deals with Mario, when in reality they make Zelda-like fantasy adventures, Metroid-like dark third-person and first-person adventures, shooters like Star Fox, tough futuristic races, like F-Zero, and other races like Wave Race, 1080 Snowboard, Excite Bike, and Excite Truck. The brutal real-time strategy games like Fire Emblem, or Advance Wars, or even third-person tactical games like Battalion Wars. And this is even including the games they make with their second and third-party partners. Name dropping a few like Bayonetta, Astral Chain, Geist, Eternal Darkness, Perfect Dark, Sector Shatter. The list goes on. I mentioned some old, some new games. This is the Nintendo I know. A company that deals in a number of genres and art styles, appealing to a large number of demographics. So I don't want to hear excuses like visuals, game, or Nintendo-like styles as a barrier for acceptance. If Nintendo had kept F-Zero relevant outside of virtual console releases and more visible as new or remastered entries on their platforms, then when a Nintendo Switch comes along, it wouldn't be as big a surprise that a new entry is coming. And not only that, but more importantly, that the best time for the new entry is now. You're striking whilst the iron is hot, whilst every other once niche or low-selling Nintendo IP is selling in their tens of millions. But there's more to keeping the game relative than just making it visible with virtual console releases and minor remasters. Nintendo, like with Star Fox 64 and Ocarina of Time, could have released F-Zero X 3D on the 3DS, and even the 3D effect alone, like many 3DS games, would have made a release like that worth it. But keeping the series relative is also about other avenues, other genres. You don't need, let me stress this, you don't need to release ports of previous games in series where their names are known in order to reignite some sort of interest. F-Zero is a known Nintendo IP, full stop. The fan base is already there and will support it, no different to Metroid or the Advance Wars. Hell, we just got a new Monkey Island, and we have a new Broken Sword coming. 2 point and crom down click games which the right person, which the right people are excited about, including myself. I still need to pick up Monkey Island, as a matter of fact there. But what if F-Zero had been kept meaningfully relevant? Is meaningfully even a word? Could we have had a Captain Falcon spin-off action game? Something I've always wanted since the cutscenes in F-Zero GX. Because those cutscenes in F-Zero GX, some people love them, but the context of them is that they opened up that F-Zero universe like we had never seen before. Perhaps something like a Mace Griffin type of game, which I've always wanted for Captain Falcon. Or hell, Nintendo could have partnered up with BioWare and made an F-Zero effect, like a Mass Effect type game. Its universe has that potential. If Sega could try with Sonic the Hedgehog on the DS, then so can Nintendo, or even give it to Retro Studios and make a third-person shooter like Adventure. People like different takes on different IPs, and Nintendo do this all day, every day with most of their IPs. A game like Hey Pikmin shouldn't, arguably exist based off the series sales, which are similar to F-Zero. Much like Chibi Robo got another spin-off on a 3DS. But there these games are. Nintendo are capable of bringing back any of their old IPs without massive investment or chances of massive losses. Let's not forget that their most expensive game they have ever made was The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and they only had to sell 2 million copies on the Wii U to break even. 2 million copies for their most expensive game ever made. I mean, come on, people. Nintendo don't need to test the waters on nothing. They can do whatever they want and bring back whatever they want, just like they've done with a random drop like Famicom Detective Club. People will say, let's test the waters, by doing Wave Race 99, but using the original Game Boy art and game style. Get the fudgicles out of here. When indie developers can release new entries to old series like Monkey Island or Broken Sword, or newly formed studios can run Kickstarter to produce games like Bloodstained, for the Castlevania fans, or Eiyuden Chronicles for the Suikoden fans, then those AAA studios can fund new entries, AA or sometimes AAA in budget, for their long and, in quotations, forgotten series. Even if a previous entry did stumble. Let's not forget the many possible reasons that caused those potential stumbles. Many of them nothing to do with the IP name itself or the lack of desire from both the fans and potential new fans. But anyway, I'm done here. This one, went a little all over the place, but I thought it was important to broaden it out and include many aspects that fundamentally lead to what the final result is. Let me know your thoughts. Do you agree with testing the water with some old IPs, or do you feel new entries can drum up the same results, if not more? If Konami wanted to drop a Zone of the Enders now, even though they've released some HD ones which didn't even scratch the surface, if they wanted to drop a new Zone of the Enders now, they could still hype it up and still produce a marvelous, stunning game. Even though Kojima, isn't around, and Konami, aren't who they used to be. When you drum at the excitement, you can drum at the same level of excitement as you do, like From Software has been able to do with Armored Core, just based off the success and continuation of their other IPs that they keep in circulation, whether they were once niche like Demon's Souls, like Dark Souls, all for the very niche crowd, but then something kicked in and everyone jumped on board for Elden Ring. Yeah, you just create what you want to create. Keep them at the levels that you can keep them up affordably, and things happen. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Like I said, do you agree or not? As always, thanks for listening, and I'll be sure to reply to every single one of you as I normally do. Take care all, and peace.